So to kick things off, we're going to hear from Allied London, our host for today, who are playing a major role in supporting creative businesses. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Tim G.
Well, thank you very much. I'd also like to take this opportunity to invite the Chief Executive of Allied London, Michael Ingall, to the stage, who's just journeyed up this morning because he was so intent on joining me to help with this presentation on such an important topic for Manchester. So, Mike.
That's actually not quite true, is it, Tim? You told me the heating wasn't working, so I brought 250p's. I've put one in, and I've got two more, because I'm the only one that knows where the slot was for the heating, so it should start working. Thank you, welcome, good afternoon. We are, is it this one? This is very unrehearsed. He is the property director, I'm the chief executive. Tim's going to talk about us converting ourselves into being an operator, and the reason we're converting ourselves into an operator is because we want to appeal to you people, the creative classes. What we call modern industry, and it is an industry, and it's a sort of a big industry, and our sort of reckoning is the spark that's created or evolved a modern industry that is all about creative industry is obviously technology. It's also a little bit more than technology. It's the evolution of markets, products, branding, and particularly branding where the application of art, music, graphic design has actually sort of never been more at the forefront of trying to sell consumer goods. So why does that actually affect us? Because actually we just build sort of boring glass and steel office buildings and create really boring places like Spinningfields that everybody says is a horrible sort of corporate place, but we still get 8 million people through there every year, and they're still spending nearly £100 million on booze and food and all those other things that we've actually provided. And that is appealing to a particular class, and it was fair to say up until 2010 our audience for our buildings there was the big finance houses, was the lawyers, was the accountants, was the professional sector. And then slowly by about 2010 when we realised, well, there weren't many banks around, and those that were being propped up by sort of governments, and the sort of lawyers started to cave in and merge, and the accountants were basically spending their time counting everybody's losses. So we realised that we'd got some land and we've got some places, but we needed to be a little bit more creative. So we started building flatted factories called the XYZ building, which was a concrete shell where occupiers could walk in and go, wow, what do I do with this? And the reason we did that is because we didn't know what to do, and that's not because we didn't know our industry, because we didn't know what Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, and even actually more traditional corporates would want out of their property. To us, it's property. To us in particular, we don't regard it as property, we regard it as infrastructure. To them, they actually regard it as a place where they work, and it's their home. So having completed this development this year, our final building was aimed at more the tech industries, more the financial tech, those corporates that see themselves as disruptors. And so we then reinvested in Manchester in 2012, and we bought the ITV estate. We latterly bought the London Road fire station as well, because that's a Be More Creative building. And our stock in trade is basically sort of buying distressed, raw, unloved buildings and actually turning them into something that people really, really want to go to. And I suppose the actual highlight of our sort of career was sort of probably the Brunswick Centre in sort of Bloomsbury, London, which was a horrible sort of 1960s revered building, and it's actually you're now a sort of catalyst to the sort of growth of Bloomsbury as a village. And so the ITV studio is a little bit like that for us. And why is that? Because it's the sort of spirit of an era. This building was built in the 60s, and it's actually still okay, and other developers would have actually demolished it, as they would have actually sort of probably demolished the sort of 60s office building that actually sits over, which we've agreed a partnership with Soho House to convert it into something creative. So St John's is what we call the neighbourhood of living, enterprise and culture. I'm not going to talk about the living and the sort of culture. Andy Burnham touched on that with the factory. And rather than use the word the culture, I'm going to use a different word. But before I use that word, what is enterprise to us? Well, enterprise is all actually modern industries. It's probably anything that's been actually touched by tech, that is tech-enabled. So we're not here sort of looking for sort of masses of techies. But if you think about it, probably 70% of the things you buy, you touch, you use are now affected by tech. The disruption has been massive. And we're probably 5 minutes into a 60-minute cycle. And that's the opportunity for you people. It's also a massive opportunity for us to do something that we actually quite enjoy and we quite like, and not probably being sort of so disruptive, but giving you a structure that you can use in perhaps a sort of different way to what you might have been using in the times before. And to do that, our big word is diversity. That's a big word, fashionably anyway, in the sort of weekend papers, and it can apply to lots of things, but it can also apply to your environment. When people tell me at the moment that Manchester is short of offices, that's property speak. It's not very intelligent, it's not very cultural, and it's not very knowledgeable. What the city is short of, in my view, is diversity of workspace that will bring the creative industries in. I go to Hong Kong, Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Silicon Valley, San Francisco. Why do we go there? And Berlin, Lisbon. We go to see diversity. We go to see how people have actually adopted older buildings, what they're doing with buildings, and how they're actually developing new buildings. And to attract the creative classes and to be creative, I do believe it is about diversity. It's also about your inventory. And that's very important to us, and particularly at St John's. We want the most varied and wide inventory that we can have. Cafes, event spaces, creative spaces, experimental spaces, workspaces, social spaces. It's all got to go together because everything is actually mashed up in the sort of same way that a sort of retailer will use fashion and art to now sell its products and brand its products. In the same way, we've got to use lots of diverse uses to brand a neighbourhood. And our ambition is to make a neighbourhood within 3 years. That's quite a big ambition, bearing in mind Spinningfields actually took us 15 years. The reason I think we can do it is because the heritage is here. These studios are here. There's something over there called the Bonded Warehouse. Our Mosey is at the back. And by developing creative buildings to go with those heritage buildings, we create diversity. So our plan for the sort of back of the building is actually 40 worker boxes that could suit you, but equally Nike or Adidas or anyone. And if we've got we need to bring the big companies to town as well, because if we bring the big companies to town, then there's more work for you guys, although some of you sort of maybe big companies, so sorry for that. So things like this that add more dynamism. Our bonded warehouse, we're not going to do the normal and actually convert it into apartments or a hotel. We're going to keep it public. We're going to keep it very, very, very public. We're not going to sell the building by the square foot. We're going to sell it by the desk. So if an individual wants to work here, they can work here. If 20 individual wants to work here, or some organisation of 50, we want the building to be used. We want it to be really a great example of how to reuse a heritage asset in a creative way. One new building, but it doesn't look particularly new. It sort of could have walked out of Brooklyn or somewhere like that. That's deliberately what we're trying to do. It'll be highly digitalised. It will actually be highly teched. But we don't want to repeat spinning fields. We really want to have this diversity of not only uses but diversity of architecture. We recently bought this building. Why do we like that? Well, we absolutely love 60s buildings, and there's been lots of social media telling us we should actually demolish it, as there were with the Brunswick Centre. But you go round in your daily life and look at what was designed in the late 50s, early 60s, and most of those things are even more in use today than they were then. You know, a sort of a Charles Eames a chair, a Herman sort of Miller chair, the Rolling Stones, Minnie Cooper was born in 1959. Why did we want to actually sort of drop something that was designed in that great era, that where the sort of spirit of everything of the 60s is much more prominent today, particularly than the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s even. That is diversity. That's going back to looking at what worked before and not changing it but advancing it on. And that's what you do. That's what technology will enable you to do. We have some corporate buildings because we need the big corporate anchors, but they're in the minority. Campfield market sat there. It's not really used at all, so we'll bring back that to life for sort of makers, for sort of for food, for the creative industries in the food and beverage and lifestyle markets. One St John's is a place to live, yeah, and it is actually corporate, but it's in the, but it sort of brings with it places to live, places to stay, and particularly the hotel. We've formed a new business called All Studios. We're retaining these 4 very cold, horrible studios that are not used for events anymore. They are actually used for filming. We've created our own TV film company. To those 4 studios, we're retaining another 2, and we're adding another 8. We aim to be the biggest TV film recording studio base in the country. And we're not doing that deliberately to sort of knock out Doc 10 or the space project. Absolutely the contrary. The disruption in the film and TV market is massive. We all go home and we sort of watch a box set. How many sort of box sets come out every week? I've no idea. There are masses of them. They need studio space. So Netflix, Google, Apple, Amazon, they're all new entrants. They're all making content. They weren't making content 5 years ago, and there's a massive shortage of studios. And that's where Manchester could play a massive part in actually bringing those industries here, and that is sort of proper creative. We've actually recently hosted the 4th series of Peaky Blinders here, the TV serialisation of a Snatch. So it's actually no sort of pipe dream, and that's why these studios are cold, because we can't keep them heating all the while if no one's filming in them. So another apology. We in order to do all this, we've got to move on as a sort of businesses ourselves. We've got to be more creative, and to do that, we've actually become an operator, which people actually tell me we sort of shouldn't, but he actually tells me we should, which is why he's going to tell you what we're doing, and I'm going to and be convinced that we are doing the right thing, which I'm sure we are. Tim G, thanks very much.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, it's good to see this is like my 6th pitch for the business, but let's see how it goes. So, as Mike said, we have, in our own way, we're being more creative. You've heard there from Mike a great history of how we've gone from being a very well-respected institutional to developer to being at the forefront of modern property development and providing those places and spaces that are deemed as not just necessary, but the future from a physical perspective. But it's so much more than that, and this is what I keep banging on to Mike and those others within the business. You can't just put up the walls. It's not about bricks and mortar, and it's not about relinquishing control to other people. As you're all aware, you're all sitting here, you are at the forefront of the new economy, and our economy has had a significant shift. The way people work, the places people work, is completely being turned on its head. Not saying the old ways have gone, but there's now so much more. And that's what we're focusing on in All Work and Social, is taking a more human perspective. It's looking at it from an individual, a small company, someone who can't take a big floor in a big institutional office for 10 years. It's that individual who wants to just come into Manchester and get out of working from home, have meetings, have a place to build and grow, and it fits with the demographic of the creative industries. We're very fortunate to have a large enough footprint in Manchester and elsewhere to have all these opportunities coming forward. So this is all our inventory, in a sense. It's an inventory of Allied London, but it's also an inventory of All Work and Social. Within each of these buildings, there's a degree of industry focus. So we've looked at what the people want. And it is literally as simple as that. It's what the market wants. It's what the particular entrance to that market and existing stakeholders want. So there's a high degree of diversity across this operational platform. For instance, I'll just give you 2 examples at either end of the spectrum. The XYZ building, as Mike mentioned, that sits within Spinningfields, and it's really quite radical for Spinningfields because it was the first building to introduce flexible workspace with a hospitality element, and I'll get more onto hospitality later. But that works very well for Spinningfields. Now, we've taken that template of a customer approach, and we've applied it to other locations throughout our portfolio. Old Granada Studios, I think it says it all in the name. Fundamentally, there's an unrivaled history here for media and television production. And that particular location focuses on those people within those industries. And then the bonded warehouse, I see this as our real defining moment, actually. Within this building, we've looked at it on a floor-by-floor basis, in parts. We've looked at it in every way possible. And we just thought, actually, for these industries, for these customers, for these consumers, and that's the way we think of people using our space now. What do they want? They want to be proud of their place to work. They want a place that will facilitate what they do as their primary means of business, but also give them everything else. They want hospitality. They want a place for a drink. They want a place to meet. They want to be able to make a phone call. They want to be able to greet formal clients and informal clients. And we've been able to take this as a template and basically go, why should only big companies get this advantage? Why does Google get to build 300,000 square foot and be the only business where they have all these creative spaces which benefit the people working in them? So the bonded is the template, because this will have all of this and it'll be shared. Every person, whether you're hot desking or you're taking a little office for 12 people, you'll be able to use these spaces and mingle with like-minded other people within that building. How did we come to this? Now, I'm very confident saying we came to this conclusion ourselves, but the year before last, we actually commissioned a report with the Creative Review, and we asked them to do a survey and asked people, what do you want from a workplace? And it was very, very reassuring to see that we were on the right page. The findings of this were exactly what I just described with the bonded. People wanted, they want hospitality, they want options, they want flexibility, they want all the different spaces so that they can work more effectively, get out of their homes and have a better place of work. I mean, why not? You spend most of your week there. Why can't it be as good as possible? And that takes me to our 3 defining principles, really, why we like to think as a property developer, we're really rather unique. Design is a core principle across Allied London, across all work and social. Everything we do is design focused. Mike is a design fanatic. You know, it's one of the few things I'm never ever confident making a decision on, because there's just no point until Mike's been through and checked it. Community is the other one here, and that's basically what I've been banging on about up until now. Community is everything. People want to feel part of something. They want to come to work. We all love being in a team, being in a company we're proud of. Why can't individuals have that? It may not be their company, but they're being part of something. And then service is the other absolute key. So service, it's got to be as good as hospitality. If someone is paying for something and you are providing them with a service, it needs to be 5-star. We actually called it Going 5-star. That was our original tagline internally when we made the decision to shift into this operational platform. And it's all about the people, whether this is the team are as important as our customers. So as diverse as everyone is who works within the team, whether they're a designer, whether they're actually working within the locations as a hub host, they're all as crucial as any other human element, and that's the difference. We don't think as a property developer, we think as an operator. And that's the end of our piece for today.